So I think actually what I'll start off on this side with is to go back to the panel that we had 2 weeks ago, which was our first Tuesday talk, which was a great success. And we had a really, really strong turnout on that side as well. And we've had a wonderful response to that with some really good questions coming through. And there were just a few that I thought I would bring up onto this side now. There was one question that came in from, they were pretty much the same questions coming in from Ronell at Safari Destinations in the USA, as well as Alex Johnson from Tortoise Marketing here in South Africa. And the question that Ronell was asking was the discussion that we had around setting a base net rate and using that as a base net, and then for our trade partners to add service fees on top of that. So we don't have, instead of the concept of having a rack rate and then offering a commission and working downwards, we would set a base net and then they would add their service on top. And the question there was, would our advertising rate when we sell on our websites be the same as the base net offered to the tour operators? And the answer to that is no, that wasn't the concept at all. A base net is your bed rate. Us as product, if we were selling something, would have a recommended selling price, which on average would be, which was another question asked by Alec, what is the percentage difference, would generally be a 25% markup, which works backwards into a 20% commission. So it's the same numbers that we've always had in the past. It's just a different way of looking at numbers, and it's a different way, and it's a different sort of terminology around those numbers as well. And then we also had a question coming in from Karen Jones at Anastasia's Africa in the USA, which is something I'd like to talk about as well. And she asked how to stimulate bookings and where clients can book and cancel up to 45 days before travel. And the answer to that is, yes, we've had loads of discussions. We had a really interesting conversation last week with multiple other product owners. And the general feeling amongst all of us as product is that we need to be far more flexible. And even if we are asking for a deposit, it will be at this stage a fully refundable deposit up until 45 days in advance. But basically, we all say, get the business flowing back into Africa. Give the clients confidence to book to book in whatever suits them and their booking terms as well. And if that requires having a non-refundable deposits, that's absolutely fine. And then full payment 45 days in advance. And then another thing is that if there is any COVID-related incident between 45 days and travel again, we go into a very responsible and reactive approach of making your bookings fully postponable, and if need be, in some cases, repayable as well. But we do need business to flow, and we need your input from us as our trade partners to feed us information and to feed us what is going to work for you guys in terms of getting that business flowing again. So on that note, I think I'm going to start now in terms of introducing our 4 panelists. So today we've got 4 perspectives from 4 of our different members in our portfolio. And from these 4 members, we actually are covering 5 different companies in 6 countries. And as I said in the little roundup that we did on last Monday, we've got from banks and bricks to planes and planes. And that was just our silly terminology, but trying to make it quite a fun way of introducing the 4 of you. So I'm going to take one of the planes now with no I in it, just an aeroplane, and that's going to be Don at Tanda Tula. And I'm starting with Don because we're actually going back to having the longest membership here. Tanda Tula is the founding member of what was then Classic Retreats in 1993. We've morphed and changed since then, and Tanda Tula took a little bit of a break between 2004 and 2012. But when Don and Nina bought the then Tanda Tula business from the McKays, they rejoined Classic Portfolio and have been a member with us since 2012. So that's almost 8 years that we've been working together, which is absolutely fantastic. So Don, very welcome to you. And as far as I know, Don's sitting at Tanda Tula as well, where he is facing a very hard lockdown on safari. And they've been doing the most amazing sofa safari experiences there as well. Yeah. And then the other planes we're going to do is Mikey from the Safari collection, but those aren't the aeroplanes. Those are the open wide planes. And here, because of Mikey being a private guide and his experience in coming from Kenya, and I just realized the Safari collection have been a member since 2008, and I remember this really clearly because it was the year that Zaza was born. And actually, as I had my daughter, I think Safari collection signed in the same month. and I was still having a meeting with a baby, a little baby. I mean, I'm talking about a 3-week-old baby. I was having this meeting with Michael Hoekeveld, so trying to kind of sort things out. So it's, for me, every time I look at my daughter, I remember the age of the safari collection and our relationship together. And Mikey, we've been through a lot together as well. We've been through the Westgate bombing, Ebola, loads of ups and downs. So this is, as I said, a little temporary setback that we need to be getting through from that side as well. So thank you for joining us. And then another person who joined us in 2012 was Fabia. And I have to laugh, Fabia. I always think that I think you were the most reluctant member that has ever joined Classic Portfolio. And that obviously she really didn't think it was necessary to join Suzanne and Classic Portfolio. And since then, we've actually become such great friends. And we've done had the most amazing journey. I've loved working with Chem. And it was also really fun, such an amazing experience being part of the birth, essentially, of little Chem. And I remember that morning so clearly when I went out with Nicola to the concession, to the Burungi concession, and we drove through there, and it was then still a hunting block, and there was not an animal. It was totally overgrown, and we saw, I think, one impala in the hour and a half that we drove around that concession. And we came back and thought, wow, this is going to be an interesting one to launch. And now, however many years later it is now one of the ultimate and best places to see the big elephant tuskers in East Africa. It is the most extraordinary destination, and it's been a wonderful journey to see how that has evolved and changed in that time as well. And then, and Fabia is actually coming from our banking background as well. So she's part of the banks side of our little foursome over here. And then lastly, the bricks is Murray, who's more of a property developing man. And I met Murray in 2018 in May. And I'd say Fabia was the longest and most sort of like hard person to get on to be a member. And Murray was the most decisive. We met in May, and by July, there were members with Blue Safari. It was really fast. And what I've loved about working with Murray is your speed. I think you have the most amazing energy that very few people have. And I think it is quite extraordinary what you have achieved. And in the time, Murray is now the founder and co-partner at both Machaba Safaris and Blue Safari Seychelles. So he's got 2 companies that he's talking about and representing today in 3 different countries. And we've got multiple camps that he's got across his portfolio as well. So lots of different things happening at both those destinations. So a very, very big thank you to both of you, for all of you, for being here today. And I think our discussion is going to be around your responsibilities on the ground, how you see things evolving and changing within the industry, the opportunities and challenges that you're currently facing that you can share with everybody. And then I think we really want to not dive on anything negative and to be too much of a downer in the conversation. Today is about being positive. It's about building a future together with our partners, and it's about looking at ways in which we can create a new landscape for future African safaris. So on that note, I'm going to then be asking my first question to Don. So the first question we have from Don, and I'm asking this question to you specifically, Don, because you are down in Tanda, Tula at lockdown, where you are with both your direct family as well as your bigger Tanda Tula family. But within the current situation that we are all enduring, what have been your biggest challenges, and what have been the unforeseen opportunities that have come out of this as well?
Okay, thanks, Suzanne. So on possibly a lighter note, because you did ask me to keep it light, but the biggest challenge being locked down here.
Realistic and light.
The biggest challenge has been trying to get remote schooling done with all of these kids at the camp. It's like herding cats. It's terrible. Now, I'm not going to dwell too much on heavy challenges, but if I can say seriously, I mean, in South Africa, I don't know what it is like for the other countries, and maybe it is good for you guys to comment and let us know where you are with everything. But certainly our biggest challenge has been to get our government to get some sort of sense of urgency in terms of reopening not only the economy, but the tourism sector. They literally kind of forgot about us. And it's only in the last kind of 2 weeks that they've wiped the dust out of their eyes and gone, oh crap, this industry actually contributes a whole lot more to the relevant sectors of the economy and therefore we need to start taking it a whole lot more seriously. So, you know, it was something that came up in a couple of these other webinars that we were listening to and I've been part of, is that, you know, we might not contribute 12 or 15%, you know, to the economy. It's somewhere between 2.8% direct and indirect 8.6%. But where we have our impact is in the rural areas. Where we have our impact is on the employment of people who are not really employable in the sense of having to have degrees and a higher education and that sort of thing. So the tourism sector actually offers massive opportunity for a broad range of employment, and then obviously where that money disseminates into a broader sort of wider geographic landscape than a lot of our other sectors. So that's been a big challenge. I find that really has been hard for us, and we've been sort of standing up and shouting and not being heard, and saying, you know, we really need to get things moving, and it's not just about getting the domestic sector working for the SMMEs. This is also about getting the international borders open so that we can get, you know, the hard currencies into our country, because that's a massive, you know, it's a bigger part of our tourism economy than the domestic sector is. So that's the challenges. Also on the ground as an operator and being in the reserve itself, and I can talk about that when we talk about the responsibilities, but we've come face to face the responsibilities. We had a bushfire 2 weeks ago, where literally our team, our little skeleton team here, had to, you know, keep the kids in camp and safe, and we all had to get out there at night and fight a bushfire. You know, those are hard realities that carry on, irrespective of whether they're tourists here or not. We've been requested to, and have actually been very much part of, being involved in anti-poaching patrols at night, because the reserve is now also on a skeleton staff, and they are struggling to keep their anti-poaching units, you know, fully staffed and covering the full network of the reserve. So those are the things that we've been challenged with, and hopefully we've risen to meet those challenges, but that's where we are with that. On the opportunity side, you know, it's been very interesting. That challenges always present opportunities, and it always presents opportunities for innovative thought. So one of the things that we were very worried about, and this is like, I'm not talking now on a broad scale, I'm actually talking about our individual operation. One of our huge concerns was, you know, we're going to have a whole lot of people, you know, who are going to be at home in the rural areas. How are we actually going to deal with our communication with each other? How are we going to actually, you know, make sure that everybody's okay? And sure enough, technology came to our aid, and we have had the most incredible, really inclusive sort of communication going on for the last, what is it now, 60 days, using, you know, things like WhatsApp groups and Facebook messaging and all of that sort of thing. So we've kind of like harnessed the technology and found that a lot of our team in the rural communities are really, really, really actually quite capable on their technology and their smart devices, and we've used that. So that's been really cool. The other thing is that we've noticed that there are huge opportunities for collaboration, not just between the kind of collaborations that Suzanne, that you've been talking about between product and trade, but also opportunities between product and product. You know, we've got within the greater Kruger landscape, a lot of the operations tend to operate as little islands, and they get on with their own thing, and, you know, and there's a little bit of neighborly activity, but not as much as there could be. And what we found in the last 60 days is that there's been a huge amount of collaboration on that front. So I would say that the greater Kruger collective has really woken up, and we are interacting very regularly, and we are doing some pretty potentially very groundbreaking stuff that might not have happened had this crisis not presented itself to us. So yeah, so that's those are the opportunities that we've seen. The other opportunity, of course, and we'll probably talk about that further on, is that we're trying to sensitize everyone to the fact that safari is by its nature a low density activity, something where you can actually naturally socially distance. And if you travel in a small group, you can, you know, really carry on with a fantastic experiential activity in a very, very safe environment. As Murray was saying earlier before we opened up, you know, we've always been worried about mosquitoes and malaria, you know, and we deal with that. So this should be no different. And in fact, it presents an opportunity for people to travel without having to worry about being in big crowds and exposed to things they don't want to be exposed to. So there you go. That's
great. Thank you, Don. I think I couldn't agree with you more. I was reading an article last night which spoke about how swiftly and effectively most governments went into lockdown. From COVID being murmured about in Africa to our lockdown was 2 to 3 weeks, but nobody really thought about how are we going to get out of lockdown. So getting into it was like just jumping in blindfolded, and getting out of it, we kind of stumbling around thinking, what are we going to do now? And I think this timeline of nothingness is a massive concern to all of us. Definitely, I see that. Anybody else? I mean, Fabia, from your side, anything, and Murray and Mikey, anything you'd like to add to that in terms of challenges and opportunities that you found?
I mean, Tanzania probably played the Swedish part in Africa. I think there was never a lockdown and they're ready to welcome everybody. So I don't going to comment too much about that, but it has been a challenge before COVID, and it's going to be a challenge after. So just on top of that challenge, well, now we have the challenge of not getting any clients. But from a government standpoint of view, there was not a specific COVID challenge that we had to face. Just to make them understand, when they asked Nicola whether we are full over Easter and we must be very busy right now, we had to explain to the Minister of Labor that unfortunately in 2 weeks there are no planes landing, but the government hasn't really realized that.
Oh my word.
And now they're pushing a lot of pressure on all the lodges that we have to immediately open 1st of July. We are not allowed to have people on reduced salaries. We are not allowed to have people on leave. We should more or less take over the whole staff, and we should operate as if we would fully work like accepted, because Tanzania is open and they welcome guests.
Yeah, that's a challenge.
Yeah.
So you're going to be taxed. You're going to be taxed on what they think you should have made, and if you don't present the numbers, then they think you hide them somewhere. So that's what we're at the moment dealing with.
Sure. Mikey, how are things just on the neighboring country in Kenya?
They're going to benefit.
Actually, in Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, the president, he jumped on it quite quickly and quite swiftly, but he didn't go, you know, Don's route, the very hard lockdown. He was quite reserved and just put a cessation of movement in Mombasa and Nairobi initially. And basically, business, apart from tourism, has flowed pretty freely throughout Kenya. If you're in flowers or horticulture, there was a small dip, but everything else has been going on without too many bumps in the road. In all honesty, I think the Kenya government has got some very good advice. I'm not sure from whom, but they've used their head in this instance. Luckily, we haven't been hit badly by COVID-19, and therefore, like other parts of the world, and therefore, the rumor on the ground is that, you know, at his 1st of June speech, they're talking about doing something fairly drastic, and we believe it's to start lessening the protocols that we have in place at the moment, which is brilliant for us, bearing in mind that we were fortunate enough to go through our low season of April and May during the height of the pandemic, and hopefully being able to gear up slowly, whether it be July or August, to allow tourism to come in from overseas. We are currently opening up Giraffe Manor to the local trade from from June the 1st, just because at the moment they're in a form of lockdown in Nairobi. So that's giving us the opportunities to try these protocols. But I think in general, they've done a phenomenal job of keeping the numbers down, communicating with everyone in Kenya, and actually doing a great job. Echoing what Don was saying earlier, you know, safaris is a perfect place, and your collections, Suzanne, are all small and intimate, and, you know, private areas, you know, small groups, small camps, and it's perfect for these corona protocols that are going to be coming out in the next few months.
Yep, no, totally agree, definitely on that. And Murray, anything that you would like to add in terms of opportunities and concerns?
No, I think, Suzanne, I think the panel has said really everything on the opportunity side. I just think we've just got to get on with it now, you know, and I admire Kenya and Tanzania. I do think they're two countries who've got it right spot on. And I mean, good for African leadership in those two.
Well, I don't know. I think Tanzania is rather questionable sometimes, I have to say. But Kenya,
you're gonna get right away for free the Tanzanian passport after what you just said.
But you know, South Africa.
I was referring to the pandemic.
But South Africa's been challenging. We've had of the third strictest lockdowns in the world. So I think our government has just gone into a really enthusiastic approach on this one, which has been a real challenge. But thinking about that, actually, that takes us on to the next question. And it was something that I was going to ask, which we had a plan to ask, but then I'd like to bring something that Johnny Prince from Timbuktu, as well as Jen Wilson, an independent traveler who's based in the UK, had brought in, and Johnny's based here in South Africa. And Johnny's question to us was, in the current crisis, there is a huge amount of extra pressure to protect Africa's wild places and communities. Whilst there is a pause on travel, what can we do as tour operators to have the biggest impact? And Jen, who is an independent person based in the UK, asked, what can we do based in foreign countries to support what is going on in Africa? So the question I'd like to pose over there is going to be posed to Fabia as a start, and then opened up to the panel afterwards. And Fabia, you've just launched, we are working on a few really great communications, which everybody here will see in the next few weeks around the Chem Association. But if you could give us an insight into the responsibilities, and Don alluded to slightly a little bit what has been happening at Tula, but some of the responsibilities that you have on the ground at Chem between your two concessions, and the concerns that you have about the future of wild places in Africa.
I mean, if we keep it positive, and I must say I'm very touched on how many ex-clients and guests and people who knew about us contacted me and asked me whether they can donate money to our foundation. We rose between February to now about $2.8 million, which
Wow.
2 million is for a school project. These are, interestingly, normally you would think this money comes from the US, 90% are Swiss families. And I'm very surprised because the Swiss are not really known to support wildlife, if I may say so. But it was very interesting. There was a couple of articles and shows on the TV where it was hinted that, you know, without tourists, then the animals do not really have somebody who protect them. So that was a very nice and positive outcome. Also, some anchor donors immediately stepped in and said, you know, no worries, we're going to be with you. If you need more money, we support you. So I felt this was because normally people don't really want to pay for that. I mean, point finish. How many people asked me, can we please skip the conservation fee? I was like, okay, fantastic. Then I'm going to be Disneyland somewhere. So that was a very, very nice experience. On the ground, Nicola stayed in Tanzania. We made that decision. If we wouldn't be there in Tanzania on the concession on a daily basis, it would take about 3 to 6 weeks and everything would be gone. If the communities do not get the benefit out of us, and they don't see why they should do it, they rather take it back. So we had to enhance our community work, we had to enhance the communication, and we have to make to understand that even if there are no guests, that doesn't matter, we still have to do our patrouille, and we had to look up after poaching, because especially meat poaching, which we were more or less very proud to have eliminated over the last 8 years, came drastically back. Because TANAPA, the organization that looks after national parks, they ran out of money. There were no tourists in national parks, and it was much easier to go in and out, and therefore there was some really bad moments over the last 3 months where it's not trophy poaching like elephants, but there were lots of giraffes, they were killed, hundreds of zebras were killed, and that went all to the bushmeat market. And that's definitely the lack of just being present there. Forget about our anti-poaching collaboration and all that, but just not having presence in national parks, then people take out what they can take.
Do you think that that pressure is also put on by the fact that, I mean, I don't know, so Tanzania was in slight denial about having a COVID crisis, but with people being put on layoffs and retrenched, and there's been an economic shrinkage into the community areas as well, does that create greater pressure? So it's the lack of presence, but the lack of people having been financially well off to buy other sources of food?
I think it's a combination. I think it might have been an excuse for them to do it, but still the people living around national parks, they just like to eat game meat. They love it. And if there is nobody who tells them not to do it, or there's not enough visitors around and it's an easy kill, they just try to do it and get it, and then they try to sell it and make a business out of it as well. So I think there might be a little bit of pressure, but food is not that expensive, and I don't think that Tanzania was after, as you know, as Mikey said, we also went into off season, so many of our staff anyway would have gone on vacation and all that, so it was not the hardest hit economically immediately. Now we're starting to really suffer from it. But I wouldn't say that over the last 60 days or 180 days that it was this slaughtering happened because of hunger, but more because of nobody actually looking after the habitat.
The lack of presence in the habitats.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Murray, anything you'd like to add onto that?
Well, I think Fabia is 100% right. I think there's opportunism, and I think, you know, but we must remember that the most important thing about looking after one's concession or land is a presence, whatever presence that is. It's a deterrent, and regardless of people's livelihoods, if you're there on the ground, it doesn't make sense to poach. Obviously, the hardened poachers will always come in, but we've kept up our anti-poaching, we've kept up our drives, even if we haven't got guests, we've sent guides out, we've tried to do as much as we can in Machaba. And you know, we've seen a little bit of increase of poaching, but not a tremendous amount, right through Zim and Botswana, which has been encouraging. But again, I come back to the presence. We've kept as much staff as we can on the ground. Obviously, some have gone home, and we've been on 24-hour dynamic opening. So we just been waiting, and luckily we've managed to do that, and we've got a huge response from our staff. And that's been the most amazing thing, and Don touched on it, is from opportunities and relationships, is to see how much this means to our staff, both in Zim and Botswana. Obviously, the Seychelles, our guards are still there, and they're cleaning things that are already cleaned and living on island life. But our staff have been amazing in their loyalty to the cause, if I can call it that. And we all take it for granted, say, oh, they like their jobs, and because we think it's just about pay. It's not about pay. It's an absolute passion that we've seen. And that is one thing that I have been humbled by, is that people really want to make a difference and protect their jobs, and have invested into next year, if I can call it that, or the later half of this year.
Madam Murray, while I'm speaking to you, just not about necessarily now in COVID times, but you have a big responsibility in terms of the blue protected areas. You know, everybody kind of thinks of conservation and they go and they think of elephants and rhinos and the Serengeti and open plains, all of that. And people often forget our blue natural, our natural ocean resources as well. And within Blue Safari Seychelles, when we did a little calculation, you're operating within 22 million hectares of ocean wilderness. If we're taking the space between Alphonse, Cosmo, Asto, and that greater atoll area that you're in, 22 million hectares, guys, is 15 times the size of the Serengeti. So that is what they're operating in an ocean space with 3 different islands.
Amazing.
Well, yeah, Suzanne, it's true. It gets forgotten. I mean, also the carbon side of underwater gets forgotten, and all that. And everyone harbors on the plastic, which is obviously a huge issue. But I mean, we've got sort of between 6 and 8 scientific projects at any one time, from birds to fish to turtles to algae to corals. But the areas are massive, and we're lucky to have great support from the Island Conservation Society and quite a few other foreign NGOs, but we try and look after a huge area. The obvious ones are illegal fishing and netting that come in from Sri Lanka and Madagascar and the like. But you know, it's maybe easier in a funny way to deal with a guy on a boat because you can see him. You know, dealing with what Fabia and them have to deal with and what we have to deal with in the bush is different. But you're right. I mean, the conservation at sea is a major thing going forward, and I think the world is waking up to that. To actually, the oceans make a huge difference to our planet. It's not just the Amazon or the Congo jungle. It's the oceans too.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. And Mikey, from your side, in terms of what's happening up in Sasab, in the Westgate community up there, and down in the Mara and up to Solio, what are your updates in terms of those protecting of those wild spaces?
Well, all of them are carrying on. Obviously, they're fairly remote. Basically, Mark Boyd, our sustainability manager, has been based at Sasab throughout this, running projects and camps with the communities, educating them, trying to get responses together, as well as on the ground checking on the park because Samburu National Reserve is closed. So every day there's a car that goes in there and patrols, like the same with our own areas, around Westgate as well. Solio is business as usual, lots of protection there with all the rhinos. And our team is going around there and, exactly what Murray was saying. The staff are asking to come back just to protect their wildlife and their spaces that they've looked after, The Mara, we've just partnered with the Mara Rhino team to set up 5 OPs around all the hills, observation posts. The tents are going down on Friday because they, again, highlighted the issue of bushmeat trade and the, people coming in to try and snare animals and poach animals. But going back to your question earlier, Suzanne, what everyone can do. You created a hashtag at the beginning of this whole Corona COVID thing, all in this together. And that's what you can do. Sustainability and conservation should be at the heart of everyone's ethos. Everyone who's in this, whether you're a trade partner, whether you are an agent, whether you are a DMC, you should all be involved. You should all be making your part in the chain, because without you, and without us working together, we won't have anything if these things keep coming. So let's work together for the end goal is the message that I have from your question is, let's all do things together. And you may have a favorite project or an elephant project or a pangolin project, but it's, if you can work with the suppliers on the ground, like Fabia was just saying, phenomenal, fantastic. It's the way to go. We launched the pangolin project, the first one in East Africa, in July last year. And that actually, through this whole downtime, has been phenomenal because we've had the whole of that southern end of the Mara to ourselves. to explore without anyone else. But there we go. So
the research has been phenomenal, but has the funding been phenomenal as well?
You know, it's quite interesting. It's coming in with all the, you know, the postings and stuff. It's coming in, not as much as Fabia's, because that's pretty impressive, but it's enough to keep us going and keep the research going and learn some more about all these different animals in the projects. You know, Mark did a community thing about the Grevy's Zebra Trust just the other day, and the uptake was pretty amazing, and they got a lot of money from it, hopefully. So at the end of the day, it's working.
Okay, so just on that, and Don, I'm going to ask you this question first, and I'm going to ask it to each of you, because we do get asked on a regular basis from our trade partners and from other people, what can we do to help? So yes, we say we're all in this together and let's work together, but if we had to take something and give it something tangible, because I like tangible things, and we're to say, just do one thing, my answer to somebody is just send us more business. That's all I say. Just send us more bookings going forward. So that gives us, you know, gives the staff motivation. It makes the whole thing turn. So we need bookings. So put the effort. I ask the trade partners to put the effort into driving the business. Don, what would you recommend to our trade partners? What can they do now to be supporting us on the ground now and into the future?
So obviously I echo exactly your thoughts on that, which is just send us guests. And the moment those borders open, just make sure that they're all lined up, ready to climb on a plane and get here. That's obviously, you know, that goes without saying. It needs to be the priority. And that's the priority for all of us who are working together in this. If one wants to say, okay, well, what could we do a bit more than that? All of us as products on the ground, we're all involved by virtue of the fact that we are where we are. We are involved with either some kind of protection of wilderness spaces. We're involved with developing communities. We're involved with education of rural communities on the ground, improving that. We're involved with, we may be involved with specific projects associated with specific animals. And quite a big percentage of our operational costs do go towards those efforts. So if people are asking the question, and I'm not saying that this has to be the case, I'm just saying that if people are asking the question, what can we do more? If there is a portion of what people are earning as part of this whole trade channel that they would like to set aside to contribute to those efforts, that would be hugely appreciated by all of us as products, for sure. So if there was if there are trade partners and operators out there who are thinking, geez, I'd like to contribute in some way, I just don't know how, you know, one of the ideas could simply be to take a small percentage of your earnings, just like we're all taking a percentage of our earnings, and say, okay, we're actually going to put this towards, you know, that project or that project or that project. And that's a direct impact that they could have. So, and I'm not saying that that's something that should be, you know, that should be a what's the word that I'm looking for? It's not compulsory. It's not compulsory. It's simply that if someone is looking to do more, that's what I would suggest.
Okay, so you're saying essentially leave a percentage of the commission on the table on your end for you to disperse back into the projects that you're working with.
Something like that, yeah.
Murray?
Yes, I think, Suzanne, that's a good idea going forward, and I think Don summed that up. But what I think people are wanting to do out there is make a difference now. That's in the future, and I think that's something we can work on. For example, we finished a food parcel drop yesterday to 12 villages in and around our concession in Botswana. And we're doing our Zim one in the next week and 2 weeks. So if people wanted to get involved directly to community, to help start, people are starving, they're hungry. There are villages that are literally starving. And that goes to Fabia's point. Those people will look to other sources. Now, just if you want to get involved, email us and say, guys, I want to donate 10 food parcels. And then we'll thank you around the fire when you see you. And that's your contribution. That's the way we can be the conduit to something good. And if you want to help, that's a small thing, but it's a very worthwhile thing. Guys, people are starving in Africa because of this. Let's do it now to help and invest in what's going to be there next month or 2 months. So a little thing like that, get involved, and we're welcome to help you out and deliver parcels and be involved with the villagers, and they will send you messages back or whatever. But that is what's something you can do immediately.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, Liz Brown has asked a question over here. What can former employees and visitors do to help? We are stuck in countries and can't come and visit, so what can we do? And what Murray is saying is exactly that. Just contact any of our members across our portfolio and say what you'd like to give, and they will allocate that amount to whatever it is that they can be doing.
I think every product or every owner or every member, has got their own issues or what they're dealing with on the ground. But you trust who you want to trust with at Machaba or Blue Safari. We'll do whatever we're doing, and if you want to be involved, just get in touch with us, and we'll keep you informed.
Yeah, totally agree. And finally, Mikey, on your side, anything you can add to that?
So yeah, with our, we've just launched that footprint, which gives people in the States, which is our 501c3 foundation. Through that, we distribute food, like Murray's saying, at schools with our, Educating Young Minds program. And we find that that is one of the best places to do it, at the schools, whether the kids are at school or with the communities coming to the school, and then it's issued from there. In this area where Tanya and I are actually at the moment, with the flower farms, we've got tens of thousands of people who were laid off with the flower farms being shut down. That is a huge responsibility. And it's quite interesting, people coming to the fore from all around the lake here as well, just trying to help each other out and get through this. It's not just protecting wildlife, but going forward from this, we believe that education is key. We've got to educate the children of tomorrow about how to look after the wildlife for future generations. So invest in education and education policies that will help us for future generations is also key.
Yeah. Great, fantastic. I think I want to move on to the next question then over there. So we kind of gone through what your responsibilities are, but let's start looking at building things forward. And we've got quite a lot of questions coming in around a reopening timeline. There seems to be huge confusion as to what's going to be opening when and where and what flights are going, all that sort of thing. If you're asking, we can do a roundup over here just in terms of what is opening when, but there's a big gap, I find, between what a country says when they are opening their doors and when we actually have airlift coming in from any other country. So until we have those two lined up to give a complete outline of what is reopening when, I think is a really big challenge. So Dominique, just from Elevate Destinations, I know you were asking that question. We are as confused as you are, I'm afraid to say, about what's opening when. And I think most of it really does depend on what air access there is and how how travelers are going to get from whatever country they're coming into back into Africa. Is there anything, just while we've got so many questions coming up along the reopening timeline, is there any comment that you'd like to make on that side? Mikey?
Nothing's set in stone here for sure. It's all out of our control, unfortunately, until the government makes a decision. As I said earlier, we're opening Giraffe Manor to start it, to try the protocols on the 1st of June. And basically, only to Nairobi-based people, because it's domestic and you can't go in and out of Nairobi. And we've actually created a video to show how you will, go through the protocols for COVID. But going back to when it will open, it's very hard to say. Let's hope it's safe, but sooner rather than later.
And I know, Don, you're working extremely hard with the Tourism Business Council in South Africa and SATSA in terms of getting a clear communication as well as some timelines on when we will be reopening down here in South Africa. And I do feel that once South Africa opens, the countries, it makes a big springboard for other destinations, especially into Zim and Botswana and those sort of countries as well. So the questions that are coming in along that side, and how quickly domestic air will reopen and borders and those sort of things, guys, we just don't know is the answer right now. We are pushing as hard as we can to get some sort of definitive answers from our individual governments. And as tourism bodies on all our sides, we are encouraging our government to actually prioritize travel so that we can get these things reopened. But it is unsure. We're on a week by week basis waiting to hear what our governments are going to be saying and when the airlines will start traveling as well. Fabia, you're on mute.
Suzanne?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Murray, Murray, talk quickly. Sorry, Murray.
No, just on a point of that, and just a point for Don and Mikey and Fabia to also consider, is we actually opening Ingwe Pan in 2 weeks' time in the Mana pools. We're opening it up, and we're expecting very few foreign guests. But what we're doing is we're gonna open up to locals, obviously, and all agents, consultants who are locally based who can get there, because it's very seldom in the prime seasons can local people go and experience these camps. So we've taken the view to open Ingwe Pan. I mean, it's a phenomenal wild area in Mana, and for the local Zimbabwean agents and families to go and experience that. So at least we're gaining some momentum, and that's how we're going to start that, and maybe that follows through into Botswana too. Just because, you know, let's just do something and then get people who can't otherwise get to these places in there.
I totally agree. And Fabia, we're doing the same at Chem, which is opening up for the expat market from July, and Giraffe Manor is opening up as well. In South Africa, we're a little bit set back, but I can tell you, even within our friend group, everybody wants to travel again. And it's the biggest demand, I think, out of everybody's just one, they're needing alcohol in South Africa, and the secondly, they want to go somewhere. So those are our two big things at the moment that are high requirements on that. Cup of tea.
You think I'm drinking tea?
If I can say, Suzanne, just adding to that, Suzanne, you know, and Mikey touched on that as well, is having sort of protocols in place that'll make people feel comfortable. For us, it's actually having protocols in place that are going to convince the government to say, okay, we're ready to start opening up the sector. So we've, the TBCSA has put together something. It was very, very stringent to start with, and I think very over the top, and most people came out and blasted it. Poor old Chifiwa was sort of drawn over the coals about that one. But the point is, we're trying to do something as products so that we can convince government that we can actually open and carry on, and that we're doing it responsibly. So we've actually developed now, I mean, we finished that yesterday, was our protocol specifically to our safari operation. And, you know, when we looked at it, there was a lot of stuff that was in those, in the sort of the national protocols that were really, really stringent, but because they were considering places like casinos and nightclubs and, you know, this kind of thing where people are literally banging against each other, all these sweaty bodies, you know, we're not that. We are such a different environment to that. That the protocols that we do need to put in place are actually not that different to what the normal experience would be anyway.
Yeah, and it's like, but I agree with you on that, Don. And then the last thing just to say, and summing up, and I'm reading some of the comments coming through, is that within our South African properties, especially because we're right here on the doorstep, and the other ones that are opening up in other destinations, we are very much looking at local travel to start off with, for two reasons. One is to create local ambassadors for people that can't usually afford to come to these destinations, for them to come to them and become ambassadors of the future. And secondly, it's a really good way to test drive our COVID policies, and start getting our staff used to it and start getting the whole thing used to it. So we all need to go through a learning curve. And if we can do that with local people who, you know, feel more safe within this environment because they're close to home, they're close to their own medical facilities and all of that, I think that that's actually a really positive way to go forward on things. So moving on then to our next question. This is going to be posed to Murray as the opening question over here. And you're the owner of numerous camps across Botswana, Zimbabwe, and into the Seychelles, the outer islands. And you mentioned something a little bit earlier in terms of your building and new projects that you're working on about the psyche of people. So what do you think is going to be the psyche of the future traveler? And in our future business landscape, and as owner of many products, as I said before, what are the biggest opportunities you see for us within the safari industry?
Well, Suzanne, that's a very interesting question. And I think, you know, if you look at the age, let me talk about the age of the millennial. In the old days, the 20, 30 years ago, people targeted people over 65 with money to go on safari. That's completely changed. When we started this business, we wanted experiential, family-oriented business. Now, people are going to come out of this, I hope, and I believe, because we see it in other walks of life, very, very not disinterested, but like we've been duped here. We are now going to make decisions for ourselves. We're going to go forward positively and do things that we have always sat on the fence about doing. We're now going to go to Africa. We're going to have the dream holiday. We're going to make a difference. That's the view I think people are going to take out of this. And we must separate ourselves from the rest of the world. As I said earlier, we're not a Marriott and we're not a Sheraton in New York and Tokyo. We bespoke wonderful holidays that have meaning. They're great experiences for families and they're great experiences for people who want to make a difference. I think the population who wants to come here are those type of people, and they're more in touch with reality than the predecessors, if I can call it that just wanted to come for no reason, but just to tick a box. I think all the panelists will agree that we must appeal to people who want to make a difference. As Mikey said, conservation and looking after the world is paramount. And I see this COVID thing as being a massive impetus in that. And it might sound like I'm a loon to a lot of people, but I really believe it, because when you've been sitting at home for 2 months, you've been questioning a lot of things. And if there's one thing that's come out of this, it's what you mean in life to yourself and what you mean to other people. And I really believe that. And I can see it from my friends. I can see it from our staff. And I can see it from what's going on, is that when we can unlock ourselves, it's not just going to be an unlock physically. I think there's a mental unlock that's going to happen. And I think that people will come to Africa to make a difference and to tick boxes, not to tick boxes for the wrong reasons, to do it for the right reasons. And I think we're perfectly poised to take advantage of that to enhance our conservation, our products going forward, and give people wonderful experiences that mean things. Not meaningless nonsense, but meaningful stuff.
Yeah, that's a perfect thing to add on to where you were going, Fabia, because we've been talking about this, and we sat round at Forest Chem a while ago. It was 2 years ago now that we sat over there, and we discussed this exact thing about the more meaningful, more conscious traveler going forward. So what would your comment be in terms of how would you, and what are you doing if you make...
Suzanne, can I just sorry, Fabia, I just want to add that in this process, I do think, and I've seen a question come up, and we touched on it last week, I think, is that I do believe people are going to spend more time and enjoy one or two places rather than 5 places. And I think we're doing that in our business, is to enhance the traveler experience in-house, and for them to really get involved in the community and in the product that they are visiting. Not just to flit around and see 8 different products, but to concentrate on 1 or 2. And that's where the circuit that we offer as Machaba and Blue Safari is very important to us. And I'm sure each panelist has the same view on that.
Absolutely. And I think just going on to that, the one person that has always made a big thing about that and was ridiculed for many years with that was the concept of a slow safari, which Fabia actually even copyrighted at one stage, doing a slow safari. And I remember one, and I'm not going to say who it was, because everybody will know who the person is. But one person turned around and said, does that mean you got no animals? And that's why it's going to be really slow. And Fabia had to actually explain, no, it's about just stopping for a moment to really enjoy being somewhere. So Fabia, what do you think about the future of slow safaris?
Well, I haven't changed my view on it. I just
now everybody's listening.
I just had to sit a little bit longer and wait. So no, I mean, for me, this is, you know, since years, I think the biggest luxury that we're gonna have is privacy. And I think COVID has enhanced that, to be not alone, not feeling lonely, but be surrounded with people you really want to be, and to have space. I think space is something that people gonna value much more. And I think human pollution is something, it's a whole topic about itself. I believe I never would have lived through the entire stress of building Chem if I wouldn't have lived in the wilderness during that time. So I experienced myself how healing and how constructive it can be to actually be surrounded in nature and get all that energy for free. So I believe what we heard before, that people might have, you know, become a little bit more mindfulness, and maybe they started to realize that running around every weekend, and friends of mine said, you know, finally we don't have a stress deciding whether we're flying to Ibiza or to Barcelona, or should we go to New York for a long weekend, but they just were stuck at home. And they are actually started to understand that breathing a little bit slower doesn't mean that it's boring. And I think the problem we have in our world is we have a negative conception about slow. And therefore, I think what we've been now all told to be slower, we realize that it's maybe not that bad. So I think now it's on us and our dear travel partner to maybe also accept that, you know, being in nature is something that is very healing after a period what we've gone through. And each of us, we have small camps, we have small places, ideal to book full private. There is, I mean, once you land in Africa, I think the private travel is much more affordable and much easier than anywhere else in the world. Maybe not in Asia, but definitely in Africa. Once you manage to go through all the big airports and you're somewhere in the bush, you actually can avoid to be in touch with many other people. And I think that's a huge advantage if we know now how to market that correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And Don, anything on your side?
Yeah, I totally agree with both Fabia and with Murray. First of all, less flitting about on a single trip. I would imagine that we will see more longer stays at particular properties, and certainly slowing everything down. And I think Fabia touched on that, is connecting with people who you love and who you want to be with after this period. So I think that there will be a lot of groups of friends traveling together, families, that kind of thing. And then lastly, I think that undressing the safari experience and just keeping true to what it is, not people wanting to reconnect properly with what they're coming to see, and not having too much stuff over and above that. So I think that the products, like all of the products on the portfolio, are true to that, and I think that that's a really healthy thing, and I think that people are going to be looking for that.
Yeah. And before just jumping on to Mikey here, I was reading some of the comments, and a lot of the thing coming up saying is that if we want to slow down the safari experience, we need to increase the diversification of activities. And I think the point that we're trying to make is it doesn't have to be, as Fabia mentioned earlier, Disneyland. It's just about being sometimes that is so important when you're on safari. And the other comment that it came up was to have long stay discounts. And I have to say, I totally disagree. I don't think we should have long stay discounts. I think we should have short stay penalties more than long stay. And rather change it around, because the long stay is what it should be and the short stay is what it shouldn't be. So just on that side, Mikey, what are your thoughts on that? And especially within the safari collection, where we've always promoted a longer stay, like we do at Machaba and with Blue Safari. But over here we've also had private aeroplanes flying between things, private safari guides, creating a whole private safari experience. And the other thing which we've seen coming up, which is definitely for like Little Machaba and all that sort of thing, is the exclusive use options, where families want to be in their own environment as well. So Mikey, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think from our standpoint, we created a portfolio just within ourselves of 4 totally different properties. But remember, if you're coming from, let's say, the United States, it takes you a couple of days just to unwind and get over jet lag. And if you're jumping around the properties, like so many companies do, you miss out on half of it. So I totally agree with the sentiments of Fabia and Don and Murray about the slow safari, enjoying it, actually getting involved in the projects that are offered, not just flitting past them. You know, this whole idea of tailor-made and bespoke and small, intimate, getting involved in the educational sides, actually understanding why Don created Tanda Tula where it is, why Fabia is there, why Murray is there. Actually speak to the owners and speak to the people and get the backstory of it, and then get the guides and people to give you their perspective, rather than just coming in and moving through, ticking it off because that's what your neighbor did. Get down to the roots of the whole thing. But I do think that the whole private experience and possibly even, you know, taking over the property, they're all small, will become more and more of a thing as we go forward.
Yeah, and actually it's quite an interesting concept where we've had a lot of conversations with private guides and how they're going to be evolving their businesses going forward in terms of exclusivity and going to do something completely different as well, which I think is very exciting space. I want to move on to now and our final question before you're all going to give some of our panelists some advice. But the final question we're actually looking at is going to be around the guest experiences going forward. And Jackie Goodwin from Active Africa in South Africa and a few other people actually have asked us about what the panelists' views are on how you're going to be managing COVID protocols and opening, and are they determining, is it being determined by your own hygiene protocols, or is there a guideline from the industry bodies, which I think we've kind of answered already. But how do you anticipate the new protocols and social distancing on property and in your vehicles will affect your bottom line? And given that so many of you have already frozen rates for 2021, and as I'm reading the side over here, just mentioning, which was a joke, by the way, Claire, about the discounting, we've got no intention of discounting. It will be happening, I've got no doubt about that. But there's definitely a feeling from our trade partners for us not to be discounting under any way. But now we are facing higher costs of having guests in camp. We're going to have a big aspect of the added cost of all these COVID protocols that we're doing, and then possibly only being able to have half our camps open, having to give every guest a private vehicle. So I want to just touch on that briefly, and maybe just to, for Mikey, this question was going to be addressed to you, what you're doing on that side. But what I'd really like to do is, because I do find the whole aspect of going on, having a picture taken on a safari with a mask on your face, the most unappealing thing I can ever think of. I mean, it's like wearing a condom on your head as far as I'm concerned. It just looks too revolting. So don't do it. But we have to think as well, we're going to have to go through a phase of this, rather unpleasant phase. But what I'd like to hear from all of you as well is what fun things are you going to be doing? Because I know, one, you're all super creatives, and you're constantly building and doing something different. And what do you have in store, and what new experiences and new developments are coming up on that line as well? So Mikey, just to give us a quick recap of what we need to do on the COVID side, how does that affect our bottom line? And then to look at where we're going in terms of something fun going forward as well.
So with the COVID protocols, we've been given those by the government. That is a government stipulation on our side. Obviously, we've taken that and made it in a much more humorous and more acceptable way. It's very stark and very black and white from the government. When people will be booking, they'll be sent this video, and Rai, an agent in Kenya, has asked about that protocol on an earlier question. You'll be getting a video which will walk you through it. It's very simple, but it's all about separation, at the moment. So, for example, we're going to be trying it and testing it in Giraffe Manor, and we've opened up the rooms that have access to the giraffes on each and everyone's balconies, and the other rooms that don't have them in the garden manor will not be opened up. And then dining will be separated, and people will be able to be socially distanced. Obviously, at tea, people will be allocated their areas with their own butler and their own house staff that will take care of each individual group, so that you have only limited contact with individuals that meet you from when you arrive to when you leave. If that works at Giraffe Manor in a very sustainable way, and it's able to be carried through, it will then be carried through to the rest of the portfolio. Again, what we will be doing is having our own vehicles, one vehicle per group, not mixing groups, because that adds a huge complication. Obviously, this adds a cost implication. We've tried to do that anyway in the past, but now going forward within this period, that will definitely be the situation. At the arrival, when you arrive, just in the same way that you do when you arrive at an airport, your temperature is taken. If your temperature is high, you won't be allowed in. It's very simple. And then we'll have policies in place for the tracing and tracking for everybody. Forms will be filled out, and similar protocols to what the government's doing all around the world. Obviously, this is going to have a huge impact in terms of the financial viability, because you go from, let's say, Giraffe Manor with 12 rooms, you're down to 6 rooms without just by virtue of the spacing. So unfortunately, that is good for the people that are able to have the access at the moment, but it will be more complicated for us to run long term. Some of the fun things on a nicer, more friendly note, during this time we have been able to, because we've had no one at Giraffe Manor, which is quite an interesting change, we've been cracking on with the day room, swimming pool, spa and gym area that some of you know about. It hasn't been going quite as fast as we want it to, because we're only allowed a limited number of skilled workmen there, but that will be able to be accessed, and hopefully by the end of the year, beginning of next year, it'll be finished and giving people more activities at the manor. Sasab, there's new rooms that have been, old rooms knocked down and rebuilt with, sleeping decks, star decks on the top. Lots of different activities that they're looking to do, but which involve tracking wildlife and getting involved in community projects. And that's about it for the time being, apart from the conservation projects, which are all being rolled out at the moment.
Thanks. And Don, what are you doing on your side that is new and different?
Okay, so with challenges comes innovation. So just to go back to what Mikey was saying, he's pretty much what they're doing on their protocols. We're doing as well. We're actually in the middle of developing a little app that allows people to put in all their travel information and that kind of thing, which is going to be a requirement from our government. So we're developing a web app that's going to allow people to do that. It's also then going to replace all the information and minimize paper and stuff like that in the camp, and signing in, enabling you to sort of check in using your device, that kind of thing. So it's quite cool and fun. And we're, again, same thing. We're making it light and interesting and fun to work with. So that's just on the actual dealing with the protocol side. And then responding to the possible changes in the way that people are wanting to travel. So the longer stays, the groups may be wanting exclusive use of a particular facility. We're looking at a couple of things. The first thing is that the longer stays allow people to experience how it is for us to live in the bush. And that's what we want to really try and harness. So what we want to do is, give people a better window into what it is like to grow up and live in the bush, especially if it's a family group with kids, So get them involved with stuff that our kids are doing on a daily basis, and give them a learning experience of what it's like to actually live and grow up in the bush. Whatever it is, if it's learning to light a fire or learning to sharpen a knife and get a certificate for that, or tracking,
cut hand.
under supervision. Okay. So that's the one thing, and those longer stays are going to give us the opportunity to design those experiences and give people more fun stuff to do on that side. And then The other thing is responding to the groups traveling together and wanting something wanting a group just to be themselves and not to have to worry about social distancing themselves from another group here and so on. We've got field camp, as everybody knows, field camp, that is now finding a home, a seasonal home, which is our, one of the properties exclusively used then by field camp and not by anybody else. By putting it down seasonally, we're going to actually just be able to enhance some of the aspects of field camp and allow again for longer stays just by having the camp less mobile. Okay, so that's the one thing. And then what we're also doing is taking the opportunity in this time to look at pivoting some of our business, particularly because of the fact that we probably need to look at a combination of domestic travel and international travel. And we're looking at 2 exclusive use camps that we're working on that are going to come online. And those will be literally family-sized camps, and very much with our team delivering that experience at the same time. So that's what we are doing.
That's great news, Don. That's really great. I didn't know about the 2 exclusive use options, but that's fantastic. And I think field camp is just such a perfect experience for things going forward in terms of being a stripped back and back to nature safari. So Fabia, on your side, what are you going to be doing going forward?
I mean, we, as like from a government point of view, we have to do exactly the same thing as Mikey explained. So this is all standardized by the government. As said, it's not that complicated because everything is quite far apart. There's always private dining and always private cars in place. So that is not the biggest headache. The sanitizers were there anyway all the time. So again, safari was already before COVID proofed. When it comes, definitely, we have to then make sure how people getting treated and how the interaction with the guides is, but we're working on that with some very fun tools. And that's also a good thing if we can start opening in July, that we have enough time to get that as smooth and as normal as when guests come in, they don't feel they're on stage, but it's just a normal procedure and people still feel that African warm smile coming across. From a privacy or from an experience point of view, I think as we will see probably more families traveling to us, and they maybe also rather take either a little Chem or forest Chem fully privately. We think we have to think a little bit more about the younger guests, the kids, and I always thought this safari atelier where kids can do something between 2 and 5 o'clock when maybe some other people like to take a siesta. We enhancing our activities there, and there's a program also for the guides to learn more about that. And that I think is going to be quite important. Also maybe an interaction into the kitchen, just to make sure that when families plan such a safari, that also the parents know that they don't need them to be 24 hours entertaining their kids, so that there at least the kids get an experience which is going, through the garden or doing this painting and mopping and just being kids, which often is not possible in the camps, but I think that's something I want to focus on.
Great, fantastic. I love that. My children love the atelier, by the way, as you know. And Mary, we don't need to go, because I know that you're going to be doing very much the same things in terms of COVID protocols, which is the general common sense, prevails. But new developments, and we're a bit upset that this year we had 3 new camps opening up across Machaba. What is happening on your side, and what new developments are there in the pipeline? And is there anything that we possibly don't know about that you're going to be doing?
Well, Susanna, I must say, I don't think you could actually build camps to be more COVID-proof than what we've all got. All independent. So I don't quite know what we're going to do to prevent more than we are preventing. To wear a mask, driving around or walking, it makes no sense to me. Look, we at Machaba, we're going to open Kiri camp this July. We're obviously not, and we're going to be opening that new 24-bed camp on the Kiri, with a phenomenal site in next June. We'll also be opening up Mana River Camp, which is the old Manulinga on the Zambezi and Mana. And then obviously Ingwe, we're going to only open up next year, but we've decided to move that forward to 2 weeks' time, which is very exciting.
And Mana River, when is Mana River going to open?
Well, we'll open that next year.
Okay, next year. Okay, so just in
we could, it depends on bookings later on the year, but we could obviously do fly camps, you know, in Mana as well to complement the Ingwe Pan offering. That just depends on demand. I mean, that's an easy, almost mobile camp offering that we could put together. But Ingwe is a permanent camp that will be there. And then on the Blue Safari side, we've obviously finished our 2 villas, and we've redone and we're fixing up the 5 suites. So yeah, on Alphonse, we're very excited about that. And from a private family point of view, we've got Komoti Private, which is fully functional now, and Little Machaba, obviously, which we targeted the experiential families in our marketing the last 2 years. And, you know, strange enough, I think COVID will just give that extra impetus. So we're very happy with where we are for what we hope will be a busy season towards the end of the year and going into next year.
Great, I love that positivity. And then just wanted to, before we're going to ask, as a final roundup, I'm going to ask each of you to give our listeners one word of advice as trade partners and in the travel industry and in the channel about what you would do if you were sitting on their side about gearing their businesses for the future. So it's a bit of advice from your side to the travel partners about gearing their business for the future. And while I'm giving you a moment to think about that, I just wanted to answer, there's quite a lot of questions coming up here from Rhonda and a few other people about perhaps offering visitors an opportunity to be directly involved in wildlife conservation. Just so for those of you who haven't seen that last night we launched the new Maritava conservation camps, which are here in South Africa, which are going to be 2 camps, one on a completely exclusive basis and other on a semi-exclusive basis, which is all about giving guests a backstage pass into conservation. And you have a 3-night stay, and you get to go out with the guides, and you do from mini transects through the bush to tracking and spurring and night vision things, full moon census, rhino relocations, megafauna projects, if they're getting involved in those. So we are gearing towards this very much an active conservation experience as well. And we will be touching base with those who ask questions on that side on that. But just to round off now, what I'd like to know is, to our trade partners, what advice would you give them? If you were as a tour operator and you were looking at how you would shape and form your business, what would you be doing? And I think I don't know whether to start or end with Mikey on this one, because you kind of play all fields. You have got a tour operating business. So actually, you know what I'm going to do? Mikey, you're going to sandwich this. You're going to start, and then I'm going to listen to the others, and you're going to end it, okay? So one quick word of advice that you're going to give to everybody as we wrap up finally.
Well, first and foremost, I'd like to thank, on behalf of all of us, for all our trade partners for sticking with us. You know, I mean, we couldn't have done it without you. We can't do it without you going forward. But a little piece of advice is to pay attention to the ethos, the sustainability, what the companies that you're dealing with on the ground in Africa stand for. First, because if you do that, you're going to be picking or choosing someone who's going to be there for the long term and the long run.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that partnership is extremely important. Well done. Thank you on that. Don, I'm going to move to you next.
So, yeah, echoing what Mikey is saying, but perhaps not just about knowing what our involvement is in sustainability, but getting to know the products really, really well, and really, really putting a lot of effort into understanding the environment in which, the broader environment into which they fit, so that, you know, so that matching guest to product and so on. I mean, I'm sure that everyone who's listening is probably doing that already. I'm just saying that would be the one thing, and possibly the second thing would be, with that understanding of who we are and what we're doing and our commitment on the ground, is you know, working hard to build a partnership with us, with the product, so that we work together to find the right guests and to put them in the right places.
Yeah. Murray, what about you?
Susanna, I think I echo a bit of what Mikey and Don are saying. I think from a trade partner point of view, what we'd like to see is really getting to know the integrity of the product and not just ticking a leopard and a line that you drive past at 60 k's an hour. I think that's important, and I think that's what we want to offer is an experiential safari, both in the oceans and on the land, Machaba and Blue Safari, and for the people to really know what they're selling, because there are serious special products, and all panelists have fantastic products, and those things differentiate us from the rest of the market and the rest of the world. And it's not just selling a safari; it's selling a lifestyle and a commitment, and that's what I think I would appeal to all our travel partners to look at. Please.
Great, thank you. And Fabia, finally from you.
I think, as many of you have pointed out, every crisis is a huge opportunity. And we have to grow with it. And it's not because of COVID I say that. I wish that the trade, the travel agents, the DMCs, take ownership of your service. Don't discount, don't be afraid of your clients. You are of huge importance. Over the last 30 or 35 years, I haven't booked one single airplane ticket, not one single hotel, not one single vacation online. I'm very old-fashioned. It's the same travel agent I use since 20, 25 years. Over this crisis, you could make your service much more valid. And I think you need to stand up as an industry, and you should ask for services. And if people only look at prices, we do something wrong, or you then sell us as a commodity. And I don't think we are commodity. And I'm sick and tired to discuss always that, in the end, we make all this investment, and in the end, it comes down to just commission. We should talk about much other things, what is important for the clients. And I really wish that the trade would stand up proudly of the product they sell and of a vacation. You are responsible for this client's time. And that's what I tell my guests. So this is a huge responsibility, and you should be proud of that they trust you, and you should charge for that, like any other service people are going to take. And I know the client needs to be re-educated, but coming from my banking background, I've always been told you can educate your client. And you as an industry need to sit down and decide whether you're going to continue to fight over your lives by discounting behind each other's backs and taking away commission and making the commission we gave away even cheaper, whatever. But I think it's very sad to see that, because it could be an amazing product to sell, and I wish you would be all very proud of what you do.
Thank you, Fabia. I think that's been exceptionally well received. And I can see from the feedback and the comments that it's been well received. And I do have to agree, though, and we've said it in our panel 2 weeks ago, is that as our trade partners, you do need to believe in yourselves. And when you ask us to keep our prices high, it shouldn't be that so that you can take more commission out of it. It should be that so we are more viable going forward. And that's a very important part of this as well. And you should charge a service fee and stand up for what you do. So finally, Mikey, as I said, you were going to sandwich this one. You were going to start and you were going to end it. So giving some advice to all our listeners out there. So what would your bit of advice be, your final bit of advice?
So all the the agents and the travel agents and the trade has spent a lot of time, money, getting this information, learning about all our properties and everyone else's properties. You've got a lot of intellectual property, as does a lawyer or a doctor or a specialist in their field. Don't be scared to charge for it. Understand your value. You've invested a lot of time and energy into your profession. You are the professionals in this field. But protect yourself, protect the chain. If we start, destroying the chain, it's not going to help any of us. So be honest, be true, and hopefully send us some more business for all of us.
Great. I love that. So I want to say a very big thank you to the panelists. We're going to wrap up now. We were going to finish this at 5:30, so we're 2 minutes to go. And I think just as a quick roundup of what we've kind of discussed today, and we always do a little roundup and conversation on this, but there was one thing about what can you be doing now? And the thing that you can be doing now to all our trade partners out there is, if you want to get involved, just pick up a phone, WhatsApp us, email us, do whatever you want. But we've all got something that you can contribute towards. And if you give us $100, $100 will go towards that. We're not in this to make any money out of it, but there's a lot of work that we're doing on the ground, and we would happily accept any support from you at any time for that. And that goes across our whole portfolio. Everybody's got something that they're doing, and everybody will be very happy to take any contributions you want to make. Number one. The second thing is, going forward, where are we going to be?
Oh, we're losing Suzanne.
As well, especially when it comes to really understanding their commitment to sustainability. We must watch out that there's going to be some greenwashing going forward. So really understand what people are doing on the ground, and choose who you want to work with. Don't be everything to everybody. Choose key partners. I know from our side, we're going to choose key partners. We want to work with key people out there who support us, who have the same ethos as us. So there's definitely on that, that's the second thing. And finally, which both Fabia and Mikey, I think everybody here reiterates, is, guys, you are our partners, and this industry is built on a lot of expertise. And we have to believe in what we do. And so when you're out there charging, you need to be able to charge for your service and stand quite comfortably in front of what the services that you're offering to people. I think it's absolutely essential, and we support that wholeheartedly in everything on this side. So I would like to thank you once again for a really good panel. I've loved hearing the stories from your side. We get to talk on a relatively regular basis, so I hear these all the time. But I think for the industry that is out there, the over 300 people that were listening with us today, they don't get this time to talk to you. They don't get this time just to hear your insights, your passion and your dedication, and everything that you've done to make this possible. So, and I want to thank you again, I think really, for just sticking it out. Because the one thing I know from every panelist over here is, no matter what happens in the next few months, you will be running your businesses in the years to come. And that's a testament to your commitment to making a difference in the areas in which you operate. So thank you very much. And again, lastly, thank you to my team, Cara, Kimmy, Simon, everybody in the background who makes all of these things happen and doesn't take all the way the admin worries from my side. So on that note, we're going to say goodbye and good night, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Please don't get confused. It's only every 2 weeks, not every Tuesday. 2 weeks' time. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.